Here we go. As we know, Ozzy Osbourne passed away. In fact, you can't escape it because it's like everywhere. He's definitely one of those guys that you never think will die, and he did. There he is. The man from Birmingham.
Gets his band back together, does a farewell tour, and then dies.
I actually think
Fucking
he's a
legend.
I think he's a little underrated, like rock and roll wise, because of the stupid Satanic Panic stuff. I think the stupid Satanic Panic stuff he was involved in. So obviously, Ozzy always had like this gothy sort of, I would even say Halloweenish, comical Halloweenish image after being in the band Black Sabbath. When I was a kid, there were people that would look you straight in the eye and tell you he was a Satan worshiper. And like you could own like records when I was a kid that had 10 times more suggestive things, worse friggin' language. But Ozzy, who was probably if you took all the records I had in 1987, the cleanest ones would have been my Black Sabbath and my Ozzy records, like the cleanest ones. But Ozzy, and he leaned into the sort of like Rammstein did with the Ozzy stuff, even though those guys are as far left as they go. He sort of leaned into it, but you had people saying that his song The Suicide Solution, which is about Bon Scott, the former lead singer of AC/DC, and it's about falling into the hole of alcoholism. It's very clear cut. I mean, there's no mistake in it. And you'd hear, things like, kids kill themselves and there's backwards messages and all that. Like the Satanic Panic was like a real thing. And Ozzy was just a rock singer that had sort of a, like I said, comical Halloween image that he leaned into. I could definitely say his songs are dark, but they're not. They're like I always figured he was like the Dark Beatles, and because if you really listen to he's heavily influenced by the Beatles. I remember this really funny. I guess John, he's a huge Beatles fan, and Paul McCartney was in Howard Stern. His thing, and like you see Ozzy comes, I want to meet you, and you can see like John Paul McCartney's like, I've been to all my life. Also, Ozzy with that great English wit, he was one of the funniest rock and rollers ever. He was totally self-deprecating, completely funny. The most wild thing about him or Attica was his lifestyle. Like how many people that got caught up in drugs? But as far as his music having a negative influence on kids, well, I wouldn't say no more than anybody else. And I don't think his music was even mildly satanic. I think the imagery was a product of its time. Dungeons and Dragons, Warriors, and all that other horseshit. And he leaned into that because people like that kind of stuff back then. They like those super muscular warriors with giant swords and, spooky stuff and, giant demons climbing out of the ground. Iron Maiden leaned into it as well. But I really think that overshadowed just how great he was. I mean, I some of his stuff is like amazing. And I remember hearing him, this is like, I went out before I joined the Army, like early 2000s, and he was considered pretty much done by then. By the way, this is him singing in a chair because he has Parkinson's disease like 3 weeks ago, and he could still fucking bring it at 76 years old. He's my dad's age. And other than a terrible drug problem, which he kind of beat, probably because his wife is, he had to have a regimented life. I heard that not Morton Downey Jr., Robert Downey Jr. Had to have a pretty regimented life to get himself off of drugs. And he managed to do it. I mean, I don't know, everybody doesn't like Sharon, but, Sharon, no Ozzy. And, he was a tireless worker. And he said, I remember they asked him, like, why don't you, like, bag it? You've done you've accomplished everything. And he says, I didn't get my Sgt. Pepper's. And I, like, really respected that. And I think he would have been in like that sort of Stones Beatles class if it wasn't for the stupid satanic lies about his stuff. That was the always thing that was really frustrating. I mean, like Black Sabbath in a lot of ways is the first heavy metal band. You know, I mean, Changes is probably one of the most moving love songs I've ever heard that he wrote back and forth. A couple years ago, it got popular in Ireland, but I don't know if it got popular in here. There was a Motown musician that covered it, and he had never even heard of Black Sabbath. I forget that guy's name. Anybody knows in the chat, let me know. Satanic positivity for Ozzy. Yeah, I think he was a pretty positive guy. I mean, the TV show was a riot. I mean, you had this guy that I worshiped growing up thinking he's the biggest badass. Turns out he's a henpecked husband like everybody else. You know, I mean, yeah, I think they kind of invented metal. And Ozzy's metal wasn't just screaming about demons or anything. That was like, I mean, in fact, most metal wasn't like that, to be honest with you. I mean, there's bad metal out there, believe me, especially in the 2000s. But I always thought his music could be quite touching, and it also could lean into that dark stuff too. I thought it was quite personal. I don't know. It's and this is a guy. I mean, God. I mean, worshipped when I was a kid. You know, Ozzy and Metallica, and it's just, you know, I remember thinking when I was a kid, I wonder how old might be when he dies. He's supposed to be around forever. He's my dad's age too. The Black Sabbath. And he loved playing. I hope they didn't do to him what they do in what's his name from New Jersey, Frankie Valli. They got wheeling him out to sing. It's horrible. But yeah, a lot of metal stuff is Norse stuff. A lot of people were just into that because it was cool. You know, he was a great guy. He was really funny guy too. Very funny, very self-deprecating, and all the right ways, I think. We'll miss Ozzy.